So Battlefield 6 open beta is basically here. It's right around the corner, more or less. Early access even started today. And like so many other people, I've been enjoying it, running around, shooting stuff. And I didn't even know there was a firing range. So I came to check it out. And after shooting at some stuff and looking around, I wanted to kind of examine the area a bit more, just kind of because I was bored and looking for something to do. And I noticed the ductwork. For anybody that doesn't know, I am a trades qualified and Red Seal endorsed sheet metal worker, HVAC mechanic. And something I kind of just started doing in video games is looking at ductwork systems and not really critiquing it, but just kind of seeing kind of what they were thinking of when they designed them in here. And yeah, this is a mess. So I'm going to kind of break it down where I'm going to start from one end, probably around here, and we'll go down to the other. One of the companies that I worked for, I did building information modeling, or BIM for short. So basically what I would do is go through the ductwork model and make sure it didn't clash with the plumbing model or the electrical model or structural, all of that stuff. And there was a program that we used to use called Revisto, and Revisto is powered by Unity for graphical rendering. So it wouldn't surprise me if there was some similar way for them to basically take blueprints or digitized model of some kind and import it right into, I guess this is using one of the Frostbite engines, and then just put textures on it. I don't know enough about that side of things, but based on how seamless it was for us to make like a 3D model and then bring it into essentially a game engine, I'm sure it's something they could figure out. Now, if that's something they did, it's very questionable. But first off, I'm going to kind of explain the basics of how duct system works. Okay, so this is your typical residential duct system. This white block here is going to be a furnace, typically, and from one end you'll have supply ductwork, so supply air, which will basically be treated air that's coming through the furnace. It's either cooled or warmed. That's where your AC or your heating comes from. And then it gets diffused throughout the house and basically makes your house warm or cold. When that air is done, basically it goes back through the return system and back into the furnace. Now, typically if you just had the same air going back and forth, supply to return, the oxygen content would deplete. You'd get a headache. If it got too low, you'd basically die. So typically in the return air system, there is little takeoffs for outside air, which basically brings air in from outdoors and adds fresh oxygen, fresh air into the mix, and it becomes mixed air that goes back into the furnace. So it keeps everything fresh and moving, no headaches, no death. And that's typically how the system works. You'll also have something that's called exhaust air. Now that is air that just directly leaves the building. It doesn't get mixed into anything, doesn't come back into the building, doesn't get redistributed, nothing. So that's stuff like your washroom exhaust fans, or your if you have a laundry system like a washer and dryer, that's your dryer exhaust that just goes right out the building. So when you get to more commercial buildings like a laboratory, you'll see that in like fume hoods or systems like that. Things that are actively extracting gases or, other fumes you don't want to be breathing, basically, right? So when I started looking at the systems in this firing range, I was like, oh, it's not so bad. We got our return duct here, our supply duct here, and, this kind of goes over the different booths, so maybe we'll call that the exhaust air. Looks pretty not good. Immediately we've got what looks like the return air and the supply air mixed into each other, connected at some point. And that kind of just happens down the line, basically the whole way. And the kicker is, it looks like there's return grills on this branch in a few different places. And they're not really going to be doing a whole lot if the supply air is just going right through the return duct. Now, as far as the exhaust air goes, same thing, right? You look at it kind of at a base level, and it looks like you got a good extraction fan that's pulling everything into exhaust air duct. It's leaving the room, except for the part where it's connected in two places to your supply air. So all that gun smoke is just going right back into the room, and everybody gets to breathe it in. So really, apart from having all three systems, like if you took out, you know, these connections there and there and there and there, well, that'd be pretty good, except for the part that leaves your supply air with basically nothing connected to it. So we'd have to basically just take off little sections where those are diffusers. So that's the air, or where the air will come from the supply ductwork out into the room. So if you just get rid of these little tiny sections and leave those, that would be mostly okay. Another thing is fire dampers. So every wall in a building is fire rated. Whether that means, okay, this wall can only withstand a fire for 10 minutes or, you know, 3 hours. I don't think a 10-minute fire rated wall is actually a thing. But you kind of understand what I mean. So going through each wall, there will be fire dampers in the ductwork. And basically what happens is if there's a fire and it ends up in the duct system somehow, there's a fusible link in the fire damper that melts once it hits too high of a temperature. And that causes basically a steel curtain to drop down in the fire damper and cut off airflow to the rest of the duct. Typically, when you're got ductwork going through a wall, you'll see framing around it, whether it's usually just like a 2x2 angle made out of steel, galvanized steel or whatever, that secures to the wall on one part and the ductwork on the other side. It's like an L-shaped bracket. Don't see any of that. Another thing that you normally see is in a residential system, you would see, if you have like a big window, sometimes you'll see a floor vent with a floor vent right under the window, basically. And that's designed to create like a shield, basically. Your warm air will come up and it'll stop the cold coming in from a window, in the middle of winter or something like that. I'm not sure if the same applies to an overhead diffuser where they've got one right over a door, more or less. I don't know why they would do that. To me, I think I mean, I don't think they thought much about this anyway. I'm just probably being way too deliberate and trying to make a not meaningfully implemented system be meaningful. So those are like my main issues with it. I'm gonna give it a shot at maybe, you know, quickly redesigning it in a CAD program and can see what happens, how it turns out. There's something I didn't really talk about, which is pressure. And there's usually positive pressure or negative pressure in a room. And typically something like this shooting range where, like I said, you'll have some smoke or gases, you'd see the room under a negative pressure. So with a positive pressure, if you were to imagine a kitchen, right, and say there's smoke in the kitchen, they'll typically have a kitchen under negative pressure because you don't want smoke getting into the rest of the restaurant. Whereas if there was a positive pressure, the air would be a bit faster than the return air is pulling it out. So you'll end up with, you know, some of that smoke or smells kind of seeping out into the rest of the restaurant. More versus if it's under negative pressure, you won't see any of that. The restaurant will smell pretty good. It'll smell neutral instead of smelling all of the cooking and everything. And all of that smoke will stay sucked up into the ductwork. So basically what I've done here is a like real rough, not to scale CAD drawing of the duct system. is gonna sound really strange, but the exhaust air system is kind of like the one that looks the most janky, but is actually honestly pretty functional. So in yellow, I've kind of shown like a rough placement of the sections of the firing range booths. And then we've got exhaust air here. This little sharp pointed mark kind of indicates that the duct continues past this point, but it's cut off for the purposes of the drawing. But everything's like pretty much self-contained except for this weird connection that is shown. Looks like the supply air is linked to the exhaust air. So if we remove that, the system works pretty well. Supply air, kind of cooked. When I looked at it, actually turns out that a lot of the connections off of the return air here aren't even connected to the supply air. So it's not like a, oh, haha, oopsie, it's just not like that. And then we have one that just straight up runs from the return air, intersects into the supply air, and comes out the bottom. Looks really strange. Quick kind of notation is that typically when you do drawings showing like diffusers or terminal devices, solid single line diagonally like this typically means a return, and like an X or a cross indicates supply. So air going in, which I screwed up because that should all be extraction. There. So that, sorry, that is correct now. Air going out, air coming in, which you can see there's only 2 diffusers for supply. But the funny thing is that all of these connected to the return air are actually supply diffusers, or at least they look like it. So basically, if I was going to fix this, all I would really do is, I'm not worried about where I have this just shows the different sections of duct. For the purpose of this, I'm not really concerned about keeping them accurate. Basically what I would do is you've got the return duct grills. Most of the duct was going over it. So if you just take these, move them over, and then you move the return grills somewhere else. Because if you put them too close to the supply, it's just going to short cycle, and then your room's not really going to do anything. So I'd actually probably do something like this. I'm going to really quickly change this around, and then we'll jump back to it once it's all done. Alright, so basically all I've done is switched the return grills from one side to the other, kept all of the what looked like diffusers on the side that they were, and just connected them to what looked like the supply air duct instead. It keeps it away from the exhaust air, so you don't have to worry about the supply getting sucked into the exhaust, or short cycling with the return, pardon me. There's another diffuser here. We'll just slide some stuff down. Like I said, I'm not a mechanical engineer, so this might not be correct. It's just based off of what was already there, probably what I would do to change it. Like I said, that exhaust system I didn't touch basically at all. You go and look at the exhaust system, it is like basically perfect. Like, there's a cable tray, maybe a cable tray, or maybe that's just the top of the range booths. So they're using some elbows to avoid that, and they've got, I can only imagine they'd have an assembly like that for like diffuser plus a filter or something. I don't know, it seems kind of extreme, but like, maybe. I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt on that one. And yeah, like that avoids other surfaces by not coming off of the side as a takeoff, coming off the bottom. Kind of a pain, but I mean, it works, right? So, oh, I did also delete the bottom takeoff there. or bottom diffuser. I noticed there was one, there was two. I guess I only ever showed one. But yeah, I mean, otherwise, like, it would work. It just, right now, it kind of doesn't. So two things that I want to make note of just quickly as well is, since this is just one room out of a building, it appears, and not a entire building in and of itself, I think. I'm not surprised that we don't see any kind of like reheat coil or fan in here to kind of keep air fresh and moving. Typically in bigger commercial buildings, you'll see, you know, fans or heaters that are kind of built into the duct along the system to keep the air warm, keep the air treated, make sure that it's moving, flowing, and that it gets from point A to point B, kind of at the level that you want it at. One thing I also did notice is, I know I mentioned the fire dampers. I did realize that with the soundproofing on the walls, it is possible that they covered up the framing that you would see for it, but you should still see it on the ductwork. Hopefully it's not going to be as long as a video as it took me to make it. Let me know what you think. I don't know, this is not normally the kind of content that I make. It was just something I noticed. I might start doing other games, going through it, kind of tell what I can tell seems to be an issue and maybe how I would fix it. Even if they're not the best solutions, they're my solutions. So thanks everybody for watching, and I'll see you next time.